school shooter was just released from prison. I was the only survivor, and I think he wants me dead. Life's not easy when at just 16 years old, half the people you know are murdered. I was always high, driving carelessly, and skipping classes every other day. Ironically, that's what saved my life. I was cheating on my girlfriend with her best friend Joan that day. On the fateful morning I skipped all the classes, but Joan decided to go for the last period. She was the first person to find the dead and mangled bodies all around. Every single corpse was missing something, a leg, an eye, a kidney, and so on. Poor beautiful Joan didn't resist the survivor's guilt and took her own life just a few weeks later. I thought it couldn't get any worse, but I never could have guessed how horrifyingly wrong I was. My parents were desperate to give me a new start. I was only a high school sophomore and had my whole life ahead of me, so we moved across the country. I decided to seize the opportunity to really start over, stop making my parents worry, and be a good boy. I promised myself I'd be a better person. I love my parents so much, and I'd do anything for them. They had a lot to lose by moving to a new city, but they still did it for me. This was a real wake-up call to make me get rid of my toxic behavior. The most shocking thing about the shooting, and what surprised everyone the most, was the shooter's identity. Lucas Rhines was smart and nice, one of those easygoing guys that can be seen hanging out with anyone. He was never bullied, violent, or anything. He was one of the 3 most brilliant students from our year. Lucas was always involved in charity or events to help the school team. We were never close, but I would never expect that from him. The tragic explanation came a few days after the shooting. Lucas had a mental breakdown that morning after finding out that both his parents had been killed in a car crash. Due to the tragic circumstances and his usual good character, Lucas was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Then his once again exceptional behavior granted him another reduction. In the end, he served merely 5 years for 28 murders. Lucas was released last November, and one by one the survivors from our former sophomore class are being killed, and I think I'm next. The first victim was Lana Armstrong. After surviving the shooting, Lana had moved from our hometown too, but still lived in the same state. Her death made national news because of the brutality. An 8-month-old pregnant woman was found dead in her own apartment, with both her hands severed. The second survivor to die was Brandon Davies, a former football player. Brandon was run over by a semi-truck, and one of his legs was nowhere to be found. His murder didn't get a lot of media coverage, but a cousin who still lived in the area told me about it. The news mentioned that Lana's death had a ritualistic pattern, but no one connected the dots about her death being related to Brandon's, and both being related to Lucas Rhines and the shooting 5 years ago. I myself only realized it when Camilla Darwin, a girl from my school who I was friends with, was found dead, and her 2 eyes had been extracted. There was no doubt. Lucas was back to finish the job he had started. I know that 3 brutal murders should have made me panic, but I didn't worry too much about my safety because I was living over 10 states away. It would be so much easier to simply pursue closer targets, like he had been doing so far, but making this assumption was a mistake. After Camilla, Lucas came for me. I was jolted awake in the middle of the night by the horrible scratch of long nails against the metal of my doorknob. The smell of decaying flesh hit my nostrils almost simultaneously. There was no adrenaline rush in the world that could keep me from falling on the floor in a pool of my own vomit. As the 3 figures entered my room, I let out a scream I've been holding for over 5 years. Lucas was escorted by the walking, rotten corpses of a couple that had been in their 40s before dying. They hobbled unnaturally, leaving a trail of dead matter. I recognized their faces immediately because I saw them on the night before the shooting, in the car crash that killed them. Joan didn't like me to drive drunk and high, so she fought me and took the wheel. But she was inexperienced, barely starting to learn how to drive. She couldn't hit the brakes fast enough when a big truck changed lanes dangerously and cut off the car in front of us. We smashed our front bumper against their rear. We were unhurt, so I assumed the people in the other car didn't take much damage either. I was 16. I thought I was invincible. I thought death was something that only happened to other people, far from my sight, or to really old grandfathers. I told Joan we had to leave or we would be in trouble, and I saw their faces for a fraction of a second as she drove away trembling. I felt like we were in slow motion, as my senses registered everything with a sharpness they didn't usually have. The 2 of them, Mr. and Mrs. Rhines, the couple in the other car, were undoubtedly dead. I vaguely thought they would be fine, but we wouldn't, because my girl was driving her mother's car even though she still didn't have a permit. We didn't stop to help. We were scared. I was a coward. They were still alive when we left them. They could have survived if we didn't run away. Instead, a second vehicle crashed into them. It was late at night and a dark road. I only learned this part of the story after they visited me last November, and to this day, I still don't know what happened to the other driver. That night, I told Joan we'd sort things out in the morning. She was crying and obviously couldn't sleep a wink. She was a mess the next day. I tried to keep calm and rational and fix everything. I truly thought the only problem at hand was pretending that we weren't in the crash. We were getting rid of her mother's car as Lucas received the news. We were calling the insurance company, pretending that the car was stolen as he, maddened by his pain, started loading every gun in his house. I was calming Joan down and telling her we would be fine as Lucas mercilessly slaughtered half the people we knew. Joan was miserable. I was miserable too, but we still didn't know whether the people in the crash had lived or died. I know now that Joan did find out what happened way sooner than me. She had to know, and the answer was why she took her life, not the shooting. Not only the shooting, at least. She went through so much because of me. Everyone went through so much. So when Lucas and the zombies of Mr. and Mrs. Rhines entered my room, I begged for my life. I did it because I thought being killed by them wasn't enough to atone for what I've done to them. I offered to help Lucas with his plan, killing people and using their body parts to replace his parents. cutting their limbs and organs off right after death, preserving them on ice, researching old witchcraft and rituals, sewing them on his parents' decaying bodies. I've done it again and again, and now the Rhines couple is almost completely brand new. They just need new hearts to function again, almost like they never died. I offered mine for one of them, so this is goodbye. Stuck in traffic for 8 hours now. If we leave our vehicle, we will die. My wife Lauren is in her car right behind my truck with our 2 cats, but I can't get out and see her. The last guy who got out was shot in the legs and then run over by a tank. The drive was beautiful most of the way, and Lauren and I spent a lot of time on speakerphone with each other. My only complaint was that there was a really bad thunderstorm that lasted for hours, but I thought it would go away and that everything would be fine. Beside our destination, I took a look at the navigation app on my phone, but it didn't show any red areas of heavy delay. It also had some trouble showing my exact location, so I just lit a cigarette and figured it would just be a few minutes. After about 15 minutes, I called Lauren. "How's it going back there?" I asked. In the background, I could hear our cats going nuts. "Not great," said Lauren. "Do you hear Hanky and Hattie howling? They started up as soon as the traffic began." "What's going on?" "Must be an accident that just happened. My phone usually gives me a heads up if there's planned construction or something." I heard one of the cats hiss while the other one yelled. "I'm so tired," said Lauren. "I know, me too. Let's stop and get something to eat once we're through." "All right, love you," I responded. "Sorry about the cats, love you," said Lauren. I hung up and tried to get something on the radio. Upon turning it on, I heard some kind of distorted robotic voice reading off a list of numbers and random words strung together across the whole radio band. I couldn't take it, so I shut it off. I picked my phone back up and went to check Twitter. All I got was the one Google dinosaur game that came up whenever there was no internet. Strange, since I'd had signal throughout the rest of the trip. I thought it was just the weather, but the reality was so much more horrifying. Finally, Twitter loaded. After a half hour had passed, I started to get antsy, and so did everyone else. People were sticking their heads out the window to try to see what was going on, but it was no use. The line of cars seemed endless. A few people got out of their vehicles to try to get a better look. I got out too and started walking to Lauren's car. When I was halfway there, a voice cut into the air. It sounded like someone shouting through a bullhorn. "Return immediately to your vehicles. No one is permitted to be outside. This is your only warning. If you do not heed it, there will be severe consequences." "What the F is going on?" some guy shouted in a thick Boston accent. He was standing a few car lengths in front of me. An instant later, he was down on the ground, not moving. I didn't see what happened exactly, but that was enough to make me hustle back to my truck. I tried calling Lauren again. When she answered, all that I could hear were broken flashes of the cat screaming, and Lauren sounding scared and begging to know what was happening. "I don't know," I said, not sure that she could hear it. "Maybe they're searching for a criminal or something. I don't know." Then we were disconnected. A minute later, an ambulance was wailing its way down the right-hand shoulder. It stopped just past my truck, and 2 EMTs jumped out of the back. They closed the doors behind them, but I saw that there was somebody else in there. Somebody dressed in riot gear, holding a big gun. The EMTs dragged the guy with the Boston accent by the arms over to the ambulance. They opened the doors and sort of tossed him in, and then followed behind. I saw the riot gear person again for a second, and then the door slammed shut and the ambulance sped off down the shoulder out of sight. Somebody 4 cars ahead of me got the idea to follow the ambulance out of there. I watched as a red car with a New Jersey license plate tore into the shoulder lane and sped after the ambulance. I tried calling Lauren to ask her if she thought we should try it too. It was a ballsy move for sure, but she had sounded at the end of her rope stuck in there with our wailing cats, so I thought she might be willing to give it a shot. This time, the call didn't even go through. I was getting ready to try calling again when I heard this loud blast. A puff of smoke blossomed somewhere up ahead, and all of a sudden, there were chunks of a car flying through the air. It was the red car from before, and as I watched the flaming tire roll to a stop against the highway divider, I decided not to replicate the maneuver. I heard the blast of a horn behind me, and looked in the rear view to see that Lauren had her arm out the window moving her hand around in a circle. Finally, it hit me that she was telling me to roll down my window, so that's what I did. "Can you hear me?" she shouted. "I can. I could even hear the cats. They sounded really freaked out," I said. "I think we're in some kind of military lockdown. Maybe I think we have to just sit tight here." "Can you throw me a bottle?" asked Lauren. "A bottle like Gatorade or something. I know that you've probably got 10 of them in your front seat." I asked her, "What are you going to do with the bottle?" "It's not something I want to shout out for the whole world to hear," said Lauren. "Let's just say we've been here a while, and I don't think we're coming to a rest stop soon enough." Finally, I understood what she meant. I reached over and grabbed a bottle and chucked it out the window, but it was a bad throw and bounced off the hood of Lauren's car. I tried again, and this time she caught it. She rolled up her window, and in the rearview mirror, I watched her fuss around as she presumably tried to pee into the thing. This was when the fleet of massive trucks started rolling in on the southbound side of the highway. Some of them had cranes sitting on long flat beds, and others had big chunks of some kind of metal material. Soon the southbound side was jammed up with these giant trucks in their haul. Then they started to get to work. "What are they doing?" asked Lauren, after rolling her window back up. "Are they building an effing wall?" That is exactly what it looked like they were doing. One crane would take a massive chunk of material and lift it into place, either next to or on top of another chunk. "Yes, they're walling us in!" I shouted. I checked my phone for the 1000th time. I finally had 1 bar of connection and used it to call 911. A lady answered and said, "911, what's your emergency?" I said, "Well, we're in this weird traffic jam and people are dying here. Cars are exploding. They're building a wall around us. They're trapping us here. I know that sounds crazy." There was a long silence on the other end. I thought maybe we've been disconnected, but then I heard her voice again, crystal clear. "Sir, I'm going to need you to remain calm and stay in your vehicle, and roll down the passenger window of your car, not the driver's side." Then I heard the tapping at my window. There was a lady cop standing there, holding a cell phone up to her ear. My heart jumped up into my throat, and my instinct was to slam my foot on the gas pedal, but there was nowhere to go. I rolled down the window. "You reported an emergency?" asked the cop. "Everything looks okay to me. I will give you the benefit of the doubt this time, but remember that we also very strongly frown upon fraudulent 911 calls. You could be charged for that, sir. It's no joke." "Oh," I said, trying to hold it together. "I'm sorry about that. I did think that something bad was going on, but now I see that everything is okay. Thanks for checking in." "It's no problem at all, sir," said the cop, smiling. "And remember, stay in your vehicle." The cop nodded, and then walked off down the line of cars. I waited a few minutes and then called out to Lauren. "I think we're effed," I said. "I called 911 and the cop that was just here. She's the one who picked up. She said everything's fine, but it's not." That's when the guy jumped out of his car and made a break for the wooded area to the right of the highway, and that's when they shot him in the legs. I heard him cry out and watched him hit the ground. I heard a loud continuous rumble interspersed with snaps from the woods. Then I saw the tank. It didn't so much emerge from the woods as it destroyed the woods in its wake beyond it. I saw another enormous wall. We were walled in from 2 sides, and my guess was that we were going to soon be walled in from 4 sides. The tank crushed the man like he was a particularly small ant. They are working on the roof now. It's almost done. Once the roof is on, I have a feeling that I won't get any reception at all. Before that happens, I'm hoping for one more spike so that I can get some help, but I don't know if this is on the news or not. I thought it was just a traffic jam, so that's probably how they're playing it off. They probably have rerouted traffic around us by now. I don't know what this is, but there are now dozens of heavily armed people in riot gear going from car to car. Sometimes they drag somebody out and carry them screaming off to what remains of the wooded area where they disappear from sight. They're almost at my truck now.